Hi everyone, welcome. I'm going to show you some easy watercolor techniques that everyone should know. For my first technique, I'm using watered down paint, a thin layer of watercolor paint just right onto my paper. And I'm going to let it dry completely and then come back in and add more layers to it. This method is called glazing, and it's a really great way to build up color. When I let it dry all the way, I'm going to end up with hard edges between the different layers of paint, as I'll show you in a few minutes. This next technique is called wet on dry. So I'm doing just basically what it says. I'm using wet paint on dry paper. Just go ahead and paint in these petals with the purple paint. You want to have enough paint on your brush, but not too much. It's kind of a balance between having enough paint, but not too much. And then I can go back in and even add in a little bit more paint where I want to have more contrast. And then I can also rinse out my brush and pull some of the paint off. So if I want some highlights or some of the areas to be a little bit of a different color, I can do that as well. Now this next method is called wet on wet. So using clean water, brush it right onto my flower, right onto the area where I'm going to be painting. Let the water soak in just a little bit because I want the paper to be kind of damp, but I don't want it to be shiny with a lot of water sitting right up on the surface. Now I'm going to go in and add the paint and just a few little dabs, and already you can see that the paint is just flowing wherever the water is at. So wet on wet is a great method to use when I'm painting things that are further away, or if I want them to be a little bit blurry. Think about foggy landscapes or misty mornings, and it's a really great technique. This technique is called charging. So I'm just going ahead and painting in my flower. And again, I want the right amount of paint on my paper, not too much. So I can do charging with the same color or with a different color. It is where I'm going to be just dropping in color into the area that's already painted while it's still wet. I'm using the blue here, and you can see it's going to kind of blur out just a little bit and end up with a nice soft blending effect. Now I'm going to paint using lines. Lines are an often overlooked tool in watercolor painting, but I really love lines because you're basically turning your paintbrush into a drawing tool. So it's so much fun. You can do hatching, you can do cross hatching, you can just do straight lines or curved lines or swirly, extravagant lines. Really, your imagination is the limit. So just really have fun here and make all the different kinds of lines that you want. And so I really encourage you to try out all these different techniques. So you can just do a little blob or a little swatch of these techniques, or you can do the whole flower like I'm doing. But try the techniques yourself because it's really different when you have that experience and the knowledge of having done it. And then you can start to incorporate these new skills into your own paintings. Now I want to show you a dry brush technique. So start with a clean paintbrush and then dry off the paintbrush, squeeze out as much water as you can using your rag or your paper towel. And then load it up with just a little bit of paint, not too much paint, and then just gently drag it across the paper. And that's going to give you a nice textured a nice textured surface. And this can be kind of a tricky technique to use, so I recommend trying it out on a piece of scrap paper first. It can take a little while to master it. And you can build up the layer and add different colors on the top of it. That's something that's just really good to know how to do. There, that little blue just really adds a lot of depth to it. Now my glazing example is all the way dry, so I'm going to go back in and add another layer of color. So again, using kind of a watered down watercolor paint, but you can see it is adding in a lot more color. And because it was all the way dry, I'm getting a nice hard edge between the different colors. Then I'm going to let that dry again and come back to it and add one more final layer. You could really do as many layers with this technique as you wanted though. This next technique is scumbling, and I think it works best when you use more than one color. But it's a great way to add a lot of texture kind of quickly, but you're going to use nice little strokes, and you're just kind of scrubbing the paint right into the paper there. Make sure to leave some white areas in between because that's what's going to add the texture into your scumbling. So this is a great technique to use when you're doing things where you want a lot of texture, like grass or trees, or even just solid areas, but you want to have more texture to it. This is called dragging. So start by adding a few dabs of color. And then I'm going to rinse out my paintbrush again, and then just using the paint that's already on my paper, I'm going to pull out the color little by little in kind of a controlled manner. And so it's going to, hopefully it's going to leave the darker area where I initially put it, and then I can pull out the paint into a lighter area. Rinse out your paintbrush as you go along with this technique to maintain the contrast. And I really like the look when I leave a few little areas of white in between. It just kind of makes it feel kind of imperfect, or I don't know, like there's little glints of sunlight hitting it. And here I am, I'm adding in just a little bit more pigment for a little bit more contrast in the middle. This next method is a gradient, so it's very similar to dragging. And then I'm going to start with some dabs of color, but I'm going to add more than one color. So starting with the yellow, and then drag that color out just a little bit. And so the idea here is to blend the two colors, not blend them together, but to let the two colors meet in the middle and blend together just slightly as they dry. Okay, oops. So see how the color ran into each other right there like that? That's what you don't want to do. You want to just kind of blend them out little by little instead of just having them all mixed together into a muddy mess. So blending that purple out, blending it right up to the edge of the yellow. And then I can even soften that line right where the yellow and purple meet. Just run over it again with a paintbrush. So this can take some practice, but you can end up with some really nice results in this method also. There's a little bit more ochre in the middle. This last technique is called blotting. And I love blotting because you can add a lot of texture in very quickly. And so I'm just painting in my petals. I'm going to add in a second color. You can do it with one color or two colors, whatever you wanted. I love this crimson. And I'm going to use the paper towel that I'm already using to wipe off my brush, but you could use a rag or a tissue, use whatever you have, and kind of form it into a point, and then just blot into the paint. So I'm adding texture and also lifting off the paint just a little bit at the same time. I can readjust my paper towel to get a clean spot. So you can see that nice texture that I'm adding on there. And a little bit more dark for some contrast. And then a little bit more blotting texture. So finally, I'm going to go back in and add one more layer to my glazing example. So you can see washed out paint again, but by adding different colors and different layers together, I'm building up the color little by little with a nice hard edge where they meet. And that is basically it. I hope you have fun trying out all of these different types of painting styles. Thanks so much for watching.